Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. My name is Lai and I am a celebrity impersonator, a wig maker, and I'm a makeup artist. And I'm coming to you today with this Marilyn Monroe, I don't know what to call this series, celebrity stories and cosplay? Hollywood conspiracy and cosplay, that's a good name. Let me know what you think the name should be in the comments. I'm starting with Marilyn Monroe conspiracy theories. So we're going to go into the official account of her passing, as well as the most popular conspiracy theories surrounding her death, whilst I do my makeup and wig like Marilyn's. I will be making a separate makeup tutorial that you can follow along if that's all you want to see. So that's going to be coming in a couple of days. So don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you can be alerted when that makeup tutorial goes up, as well as my future Hollywood conspiracy theory videos. Leave me a comment down below, let me know what you think happened to Marilyn Monroe, and as per usual, everything will be listed down below in the description box, as well as where to get this gorgeous wig on my Etsy store. But other than that, let's get into it. We all love Marilyn Monroe. Me personally, I'm f***ing obsessed. What happened to her? I'm gonna rewind a little bit to the day of her death. So that would be August 4th, 1962. Her housekeeper, Eunice Murray, got to Marilyn's house at around 8:30 in the morning, and Marilyn was already awake, or she was still awake, let's say. And she was doing a little bit of DIY. We all love a bit of DIY, so why is that weird? I don't know. But tiling specifically, so I find that weird. She seemed in quite good spirits, although she was bloody knackered because she hadn't really slept. But other than that, she was alright. And there are reports that say that she spoke to a furniture designer-y kind of guy because she was expecting some furniture to arrive from, I think, Argentina over the next few days. And so she was sorting that kind of stuff out in her house. Like, she's redecorating, so a lot of people were like, oh, her house was a mess. She was obviously like a mess herself, but whose house isn't a mess when they're redecorating? Then Pat Newcomb wakes up, who had stayed over at Marilyn's house. And at the time, Pat Newcomb was Marilyn Monroe's publicist and friend. So she stayed over the previous night and woke up around midday. And this is so weird to me. Eunice Murray said that Marilyn, once Pat had woken up, started a huge argument with Pat because Pat managed to sleep and Marilyn didn't. Like, I don't know, I feel like that's just weird. Anyway, there's a lot of weird shit that happens. Really, I should be letting you guys make your determinations. They resolve the argument and Pat decides that she's gonna go out shopping, and Marilyn does not want to go out shopping. She's gonna stay here and they're gonna hook up later. They had a very brief discussion about going to Peter Lawford's house because he was having a little get together that evening, a little dinner party. And Peter Lawford was an actor, part of the Rat Pack, and he was also the Kennedy's brother-in-law. He was married to one of the Kennedy sisters, not the one that they had lobotomized. Yeah, because that's the kind of people they are. Pat's off shopping, and at some point during the day, Marilyn becomes distressed. She's like, oh. And so she has an impromptu session with her psychiatrist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, who comes over to her house at around 5:30. They have a session together where Marilyn's just not happy, and during that time, Pat Newcomb comes home, and Dr. Ralph Greenson finishes up his session with Marilyn and says to Pat, hey, you know what, can you just nip off home? And then says to Eunice Murray, the housekeeper, look, can you stay over? I know you don't usually stay over, but can you just stay in your room and like just keep an eye on Marilyn because she's just not happy today. Eunice is like, yeah, sure, no problemo. Dr. Ralph Greenson leaves at around 7:30 p.m. Pat Newcomb has already left. Marilyn takes the telephone. She has two telephones in her telephone room. There was like the house phone and then Marilyn's kind of personal line. And she takes the phone and goes into her bedroom and locks the door. She didn't usually lock the door, but if I had someone staying over that didn't usually stay over, I would probably lock the door too. Marilyn then does her usual nightly routine of talking on the phone to her friends. And one of the people that spoke to her that evening was her stepson from her marriage to Joe DiMaggio, and his name was Joe DiMaggio Jr. Now, Joe DiMaggio says that he spoke to Marilyn and she seemed like she was in really high spirits, and she was actually really happy because not only was she just generally in high spirits, but he had just broken up with a girl that Marilyn didn't like. So she was like, yay. He said there was nothing to worry about by his account. And Peter Lawford said that he had phoned Marilyn at that time, or around about that time, and had said that Marilyn sounded despondent and woozy and drunk and just like not great. And he said, look, come on Marilyn, come to my party. And she was like, no, I don't want to. And also say goodbye to Bobby, say goodbye to the president, and say goodbye to yourself because you're a good guy. Now, I find that weird. I don't know. Like, you remember that guy that they made that Netflix documentary about, and he had murdered his wife, and he was like texting himself from her phone, like saying how amazing he was. It's just very narcissistic. Like, I don't believe it. sorry. It's just a weird thing to say. Like, you're not off yourself. You're not gonna be like, you're a good guy. Then after the "you're a good guy" line, apparently her voice started to fade out and he tried to give her a verbal slap on the face to wake her up because he was worried about her, and it didn't work. So he phoned one of his press people.
It was Peter Lawford's agent, Milton Evans.
And asked that guy to check on Marilyn, and that guy called one of his contacts,
Marilyn's lawyer, Mickey Rudin,
and said, could you check on Marilyn? And they all meant like do a physical check, but all that happened was he phoned the other phone in the house, and Eunice Murray picks up and he says, hey, is Marilyn okay? And because Eunice, like, why didn't you go and check on her? But she didn't go and check on her. She just went, yeah, the light's on, the phone line is under the door, Marilyn's fine. Like, you've just seen Marilyn apparently have a breakdown earlier that day. You're there to look after her. Why are you not actually checking on her? But she doesn't, and she goes to bed. This is now around 9:30 in the evening. So then Eunice goes to bed, everyone thinking Marilyn's okay. And I guess maybe she was saying that fact that, you know, it was niggling at her, that she didn't know if Marilyn was okay for sure. So she gets up at around 3:30 and sees that Marilyn's light is still on and the phone line is still under the door. Now, because Marilyn was such a light sleeper and had such problems with sleeping, Marilyn always put the phone back. She did not sleep with the phone in her room, and she would also unplug the telephones in the house, which hadn't happened. So Eunice tries the door and it's locked, and so she goes round to the window, which is barred, and she has a little peek inside and she sees Marilyn lying face down, naked, and just not looking quite right. So Eunice is like, shit. And she calls Dr. Ralph Greenson, Marilyn's psychiatrist, and says, there's something wrong with Marilyn. Like, I don't know what the fuck. And he says, okay. They kind of changed this story up a little bit. One time they said it like she'd already peered through the window. Another time he told her to peer through the window. But regardless, he was on his way, and she had said there's something wrong with the way Marilyn looks. So he's on his way. And he says, in the meantime, please can you call Dr. Hyman Engelberg, which is Marilyn's physician. She's like, yeah, we'll do. Dr. Ralph Greenson arrives and shatters the window to get into Marilyn's room from the outside. I think there were like patio doors in her room. I don't know why you'd have barred windows and then just like patio doors. But he gains access to the room and then opens the door from the inside and sees Marilyn face down, and he's like, yeah, she did. She is dead. She's clutching the phone receiver and she's, wait, is this my left side? Yeah. She's like lying down like this. That's important. Remember that. So then Dr. Hyman Engelberg arrives and pronounces Marilyn dead at the time that Eunice found her, around 3:30 a.m. And they have a little chat for 20 minutes. Don't know why. And then they call the police. Later in life, they said that they had to call the studio to get approval that they could call the police, but I don't think that's how things work. But anyway, so the police come and they investigate and they contaminate the crime scene. They don't really take much evidence, but they do ask, like, why didn't you guys like let us know what had been going on? And strangely, Eunice Murray, when the police had arrived, was doing the laundry in the house. And they were like, well, this is fine. She's a housekeeper. That's what she does. As the police are investigating the scene, they asked Dr. Ralph Greenson, is this how you found her? And he's like, yes, but she had a phone receiver in her hand, which I have removed. And they were like, okay. Now this is weird because the lividity on her body, lividity is where the blood pools, it's called liver mortis, but we'll call it lividity, is where the blood pools after you die. It takes around 6 hours for this process to complete, and not as long as that if it's a hot day. And I checked how hot the day was, the night was, it was fucking boiling. Her face, remember, was facing the right, meaning her left side was on the pillow, but the lividity on her face was on the right side, which means she was mostly, there was a tiny bit here, but mostly like this, which means the blood had pooled on this side of her face. And she had most of the lividity on her belly, but there were some, the beginnings, on the backs of her thighs, her buttocks, and her lower back, which means she had to really have died sitting up, leaning back on her back, and then been moved to her front where the process continued. And then after that, moved again, so that her face was facing the other way. So the police are a bit like, this is weird. We're gonna question you guys. So they question, but ultimately they just take what they take, and they notice like the nightstand has about 12 bottles of pills. Then Dr. Engelberg's like, oh, look at these pills here. Oh my god, this little tub is empty, and I just filled that prescription for her. It must have had like 50 pills in it. It didn't. It had like 35, but he was exaggerating. Oh, she must have taken all of these. But there was no water glass in her room. How is she gonna raw dog 34 pills? She had to have died at 10:30 p.m, which means it took around, I believe, half an hour for the pills to work. So that takes it to 10 p.m. She was already in her room. How did she fucking do that? There's no pill casings in the room. There's no pill casings in her system. So anywho, The police do what they need to do and they have her body driven away. First it goes to the morgue and then the mortuary, then the morgue. I always get those two mixed up. For her autopsy, and Dr. Noguchi started working on her at 9:30 a.m. I'm not going to go through the entire autopsy because it would just be far too long, but the key things to note from the autopsy is there were no pill casings in her system, which it has been proven that could happen, especially seeing as she was a regular drug user, but because she didn't drink any water with it, you would expect it to get quite claggy, like, so it's a bit unlikely, but it could happen. They have recreated that process using like test tubes, but glass and esophagus disease are two different things. Lividity, as I already explained, wrong places. Her colon was discolored. Now, there are a few ways in which a colon can get discolored. One of them is drug abuse. Another one of them is abuse of laxes. Another one is enemas, and another one is trauma. And another thing to note was her body was inspected under microscope for needle marks, which is why people say she couldn't have been given an injection to kill her, because Dr. Noguchi and the assistant district attorney, I forgot his name now.
His name was John Miner, and there he is with my gorgeous friend Susie Kennedy.
Checked over her entire body with a microscope and there was no needle mark. Now, this I think we can ignore because I read this book, and this is Dr. Noguchi's book. In it, he explains that there were no needle marks on Marilyn's body. Her body was old. The needle marks may not still be there by the time she was autopsied, but additionally, he also attended the scene of John Belushi's death, and they could not find a needle mark on his body. He could not find a needle mark under microscope on his body. So he started squeezing areas of the body to get droplets of blood to come out of the puncture holes, which you couldn't do on Marilyn's body because it was too old. John Belushi had just died. Marilyn had been dead for hours, so it wouldn't have worked. So the whole she couldn't have died by injection is bullshit. She could have died by injection. He couldn't fucking find needle marks on other patients. So Dr. Noguchi is performing the autopsy, and as is her usual, he sends off bits of her liver, bits of her stomach, and other bits and bobs for testing in toxicology, as well as her blood. So her blood was tested and it was found that she was around, I think it's something like 10 times the amount that would kill somebody, which would equate to about 35 pills of Nimbutal and 5 pills of chloral hydrate. So the lab tests Marilyn's blood, but they lose her organs, and they said later, no, we didn't lose them. We just thought there was no point in testing them because she obviously overdosed and killed herself. And it's like, you can't just assume that. That's why you're doing the tests. Like, literally the entire reason you have the organs is never in history happened since autopsies were a thing. So then they decide, oh, okay, well, we are done with this, so let's just list the cause of death as a probable suicide. Again, really weird, because that's not how you list a death. See, if you don't know how someone's died for sure, you don't write probable anything, you write undetermined. That is the official verdict for when you cannot establish what exactly has happened. But probable suicide was written, obviously, to create a story, planting that seed. Now, I'm not saying that Marilyn wasn't capable of doing that to herself. I think she was incredibly capable of doing that to herself. There are just too many things that don't really add up with, in my opinion, the probable suicide or the accidental overdose. And we're going to get into some of these conspiracy theories of what else could have happened. And I think there's more evidence to support some of the, not all of them, some of the conspiracy theories than the official verdict. As the official verdict was listed as probable suicide, we'll start there. The evidence that they had said supports the probable suicide theory is that Marilyn had just been fired from her film Something's Got to Give. She was aging out of Hollywood. She was no longer seen as the most beautiful woman in the world, which is not true, by the way, but that's what they're saying. The media tide was turning against her. She was being sued by 20th Century Fox. They say because she was late and she was always sick and all of this stuff, but really it was to recoup the money they were losing on Cleopatra. Thanks, Elizabeth Taylor. And that her love life was not going well. At the time, it was not confirmed that she was seeing either of the Kennedy brothers, but it was pretty much common knowledge anyway. She was already mentally ill. She had a history of mental illness in her family, and so that's just what happened. She just did it. They also had said that what proves that she'd done it is her house was a mess, but we've already established that she was redecorating and that she was physically unkempt. She had roots coming through, her nails weren't done. Put your hand up if you're a woman, especially someone who was blonde or is blonde, and you at some point in your life have not done your nails and also had roots coming through. Like, that was me 90% of the time. Additionally, she had just been rehired by the studio to finish Something's Got to Give. She had an upcoming press release to announce this? All of the reasons just don't add up. Also, some people just have messy rooms, like, doesn't mean anything. Now moving on to accidental overdose, which was another theory, and it was that she just can't sleep. This woman, her insomnia is insane. I can relate, I have the worst insomnia. And that she would take these pills and forget that she would take them, and so would take another dose, and then another dose, and then another dose. I feel like taking 35 pills is a bit much. All of her friends reported that not only could Marilyn not raw dog 35 pills, she could not take one aspirin without copious amounts of water. So when she was taking her medication, she often used to crack it into her champagne, which would have a knock-on effect because it would make her lose her memory, and then she would take another dose and another dose and another dose. But the timeline then doesn't add up because she was already in her bedroom for a while with the door locked, with no champagne, and there's no glass for the champagne. There's no pill casings. So if she'd done that in another room, everything would have already happened before she got on the phone to these people. So that one doesn't really make sense to me. So the next one we're going to talk about is the CIA and FBI killed her because she was a threat to national security. Now, not only was Marilyn seeing President John F. Kennedy, she was also seeing Bobby Robert Kennedy, his brother, who was the Attorney General. Now, Bobby, little loose-lipped Bobby here, used to try and woo Marilyn by sharing state secrets with her, like, yeah, Fidel Castro, baby. And Marilyn, being Marilyn, with her thirst for knowledge and not wanting to appear stupid, I've done this eyebrow completely wrong, she would write down all of the state secrets so that she could remember them and be knowledgeable about them. Now, her apartment was bugged by the CIA and FBI. So when the Kennedys, especially Bobby, both had broken up with her, she went fucking mental, and she was calling the White House and she was threatening to let everyone know what had happened and that they were seeing each other and that the Kennedys are just trash and all of these secrets. She threatened that the press release for Something's Got to Give, I'm going to tell everybody this is what I'm arranging the press release for. So the CIA were like, well, we gotta kill her. There's another offshoot of this theory that goes that the day of her death, Pat Newcomb was indeed there, Eunice Murray was indeed there, but the reason Marilyn was upset was because Bobby and Peter Lawford had come over to her house to say, look, like what she thought was maybe rekindling things. He was like, look, you're done, we're done, and also give me everything that you have because we're done, and stop calling the White House, it's not gonna happen. And for years, Bobby Kennedy had claimed that he was out of the state at his mate's house on the day of her death, and it's been found that he actually flew in on the day that she died and then flew out in the morning. That's convenient. So the story is he went over to her house to officially end things, to get everything that he needed to like protect himself and his brother, and Marilyn went ballistic and she picked up something, some kind of weapon. Some people say a knife, some people say a letter opener, some people say a smashed bottle, though smashing a bottle of champagne, I don't know if you've ever tried to smash a bottle of champagne, but it is difficult, so I don't think it was that. And then he pushed her back, because I forgot to mention in the autopsy she had some bruising on her back, some mild bleeding under the skin, which is consistent with having been pushed back, but it could have been like she just literally fell over or whatever, you know. So yeah, him and Peter Lawford actually went over to sort this whole thing out and get all the evidence they needed out of the house. And that's actually why Marilyn was super upset, and that's why Pat Newcomb was like, I gotta go, because the Kennedys, she was in their pocket and she was like, let's follow the Kennedys. And then Marilyn did indeed have a session with her psychiatrist because of this upset with Bobby Kennedy. And at this point she was like, I am literally going to tell everyone what he's done, like everybody. So the CIA, FBI swoop in, and she's in a completely different room to her bedroom. They murder her in the spare room which Pat Newcomb had been staying in. They either do this by injection or by enema, because she was partial to an enema. She did enjoy them. I think her pills used to give her a bit of consti, and also she used it as like for weight loss. So the CIA then are like she's just become too dangerous. She knows everything. Bobby gave them the go ahead, and they went in and they did what they had to do, and they went out again. So, you know, everyone was in the pocket. Now the other theory is it wasn't an assassin for the CIA or FBI. It was Dr. Hyman, Dr. Ralph Greenspan, and Eunice Murray being ordered by Bobby Kennedy and the government to do it for them. And she was given these drugs by her physician and psychiatrist, and the cover-up done by Eunice, and Pat Newcomb was in on it too, and like she trusted them. So she was like, yeah, I'm stressed as so you can give me any kind of injection that you want, you can give me any kind of enema that you want. And they gave her all of these chemicals in that form. Now that doesn't quite add up because of the phone call with Joe DiMaggio Jr. because she would already, they were already there, like Ralph Greenspan was already there. Unless he came back, like that could have happened, he could have come back, so we don't know. But yes, she was murdered in a separate bedroom on her back, which where the blood pools is enema position. It's also injection position. Then moved into her bedroom and the whole story begins. Another theory that involves her doctors is that yes, it was her doctors that did it, but it was an accident because she was stressed that day and her doctors came over to do a session with her and she had already taken a bunch of her pills because she was stressed as fuck, and then he also gave her her injection or her enema, and then she dies and he's like, oh shit. Oops, what do we do now? And then they create a whole cover-up because it was like, oh fuck, I have just killed her. I just don't know that Eunice Murray is gonna cover that up for him for like her entire life. She wasn't really a maid, she was planted there by him because she was a psychiatric nurse. She did say in a late interview, like her mic was still turned on, and she did say, oh my god, why am I still covering this up? So that is the accidental murder by her doctors. So the last theory is that the mafia did it. Now, this one I think is bullshit, but anyway. So Marilyn Monroe was really good friends with a lot of people in the mafia. She was also really good friends with Frank Sinatra, as we know, and Robert Kennedy was in a campaign of like, fuck the mafia, we hate them, let's get them out. And the mafia were pretty pissed off about this because they had gotten Jack Kennedy into office. Part of the deal was, you know, we scratch your back, you scratch our back, you turn your blind eye. But instead, Robert Kennedy was like gunning for them. So they thought, how can we make a little problem for our little friend Bobby? I know what we're gonna do. We're gonna kill his girlfriend. And then it's gonna get out that he was dating her and he's a Catholic family man and it's just gonna completely ruin his career. And so they send an assassin to go and administer either the lethal injection or the enema to Marilyn at her house. And then they decide, well, Eunice Murray's there, and so they have to like threaten her and be like, if you tell, we're gonna kill you. But then why wouldn't they just kill her? I don't know, to me that it just doesn't make sense. Like, wouldn't you just kill her too? Or I guess that would be too obvious though, I don't know. So yeah, they administer everything and they get Eunice Murray to cover it all up for them and to help them, like, you know, the body should go here, this is how we should do it. I don't know, that one to me doesn't really make much sense. If you ask me which one I think it is, I do think Bobby Kennedy went to her house that day with Peter Lawford, and I think the Peter Lawford phone call that he claims is a partial alibi. I don't think she said anything that he said that she said. I don't even know if she answered the phone or if he just phoned the house to say that he phoned the house. Bobby Kennedy was definitely in the area at the time, flew in especially, and then flew out as soon as everything had gone down. I believe he was there. I believe that whoever did kill her did it on his instruction. I 100% believe it. There's nothing you can say to me that would like make me not believe that. The dots align so much for that to be the case. Things going missing, things not being done properly, things being changed, it just all makes more sense than anything else. But regardless if that is the truth or just my opinion, all signs still point to Bobby Kennedy. If she did it to herself, it was because of her treatment by the Kennedy brothers, especially Bobby, because she wasn't into JFK that much. He was selfish in bed and he was just a bit of a... But Bobby, she was like, oh, she was hot for him. So yeah, if she did it to herself, it was because of him. If the mafia did it to her, it was to get back at Bobby or to create a scandal around Bobby. They're gonna kill your girlfriend to make you sad. Like, haha, we killed your girlfriend, stop messing with us. If her doctors did it to her, it was to sedate her because she was upset about Bobby. If it was an accident, it was because she was self-medicating. Because of Bobby, whatever way you slice it, Bobby, it's him. He did it. I do believe in the Kennedy curse. I believe that they got what they deserved. Look into what the dad did to the sister. And not because she was nuts, just because she was a free thinker and a woman. If you read this book, The Kennedys in Hollywood, now this is written by the Kennedys' press secretary. He fucking hated Marilyn, by the way. And there's an entry in this book about Marilyn. And it says that, oh, she did it to herself. Now, Jane Mansfield, she was also having an affair with Jack Kennedy. And in the book, he says, oh, Marilyn did it to herself. People need to shut up about it. But then in the very next chapter, after Marilyn had died, Jane Mansfield was freaking out, saying, I'm gonna be an ex. And he advised, as well as other people, advised Jane Mansfield to like get out of town for a while, to go to Versailles, because she was obsessed with Versailles anyway. Then when Jane Mansfield's star was definitely on the decline, just before she died, she said, oh, I think I want to write a book. And then he said to her, well, do you think anyone's going to, you know, read your book because you're not really that famous anymore. And then she was like, no, but I'm going to tell everything. And then he was like, you don't want to happen to you what happened to Marilyn. So why would you say in Marilyn's chapter, she did it to herself, the Kennedys had nothing to do with it, but then tell Jane Mansfield and say in the next chapter that you advised Jane Mansfield against going public so that she doesn't get offed? Am I missing something here? Has someone else read that book? I just don't think that any of the she did it to herself side of things add up. It just doesn't add up. I don't know how people still think that it could have been herself. So that's my opinion. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments. I would love to hear your opinions. I would love to hear new knowledge that you guys might have found out that I don't know about. That would be great. And let me know if you want me to deep dive into any of the specific conspiracy theories because they are so convoluted. A lot of them cross over each other as well. But I would love to do some deep dives and some different Marilyn looks because I really enjoyed doing this. Other than that, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you want to see what I come up with next. And leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of the video. Let me know what you think of the case, and let me know if there's anything you want to see next. As per usual, everything will be listed down below in the description box, including where to get this wig on my Etsy store. And I would like to thank you so very much for watching. Really enjoyed making this video. I would love to wish you the best day ever. Try and do it like Marilyn.